So, if you're a fearful avoidant or a loved one of a fearful avoidant, you're probably quite familiar with fearful avoidants having some kind of moment of volatility. And sometimes, as a fearful avoidant, you may internalize that volatility and sort of deflect it back on yourself and be really mean or cruel to yourself in your internal dialogue. Or if you have a stronger challenge with emotional regulation, you may outwardly, express that emotional volatility onto other people. And then come to really regret it or feel guilty or sad about it later on after the fact. So, in this video, I want to take you through some really powerful things to understand about those moments of volatility and some tools that you can use to move through them. So, first and foremost, when you are at the point of emotional volatility, usually three major things have happened. There was a need or a series of unmet needs that took place that went on for a period of time. So, an example of this might be that, let's say you live with somebody and it was their turn to do the dishes, and you didn't have them take a turn to do the dishes and you just kept doing them yourself without saying anything. And the first time it wasn't a big deal, they were busy. The second time, okay, it's kind of annoying. Third time, you're starting to get frustrated. And the fourth and fifth time, that's when like this volatility is building up. Now, the way to solve for that volatility is not to get angry and get frustrated and say, you never do X, Y, and Z, and to become critical. It's to actually realize that there was a series of needs you weren't expressing first, or a need that you weren't expressing that happened multiple times that went unmet. And you have to be able to turn around and say, hey, I need support. And FAs, they tend to struggle with being able to show up and vulnerably ask for their needs to be met because they carry this subconscious assumption that it won't be because of conditioned experiences, right? Because of often having a lack of needs being met in their upbringing. So you get conditioned to think, well, why bother? Like it's not even a conscious recognition the vast majority of the time. It's like subconscious autopilot assumption that takes place. So that's the first thing that often happens. The second thing is there's often a story that's added to it. So usually it's not just the unmet need, but then you give it meaning and you're like, oh, they don't care about me. So like maybe the need is to be supported, but the story is I'm not cared for, I don't matter, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of having my needs met. There can be stories that you give. So like let's say it's a roommate and the roommate doesn't do the dishes. You're going, oh, they disrespect me. They don't care about me. And we give a story, and that story is actually usually based on our history. It's usually based on experiences that we had in the past that we sort of held on tight to and gave meaning to as well. And those things became stored and dormant in our subconscious mind. And then the moment we get frustrated about something and the mind's looking to find out why is this happening, which it will seek certainty. Right away, the subconscious usually spits out this old story and it says, oh, it's because you're disrespected or it's because you're not cared for. And so then we have this unmet need combined with a story. And then the third major thing that tends to lead to this is there can be a little bit of nervous system dysregulation or having difficulty like getting in touch with your own feelings until they're too big. And so these three things tend to create this dynamic of like, okay, this criticism that happens. And the reason I really wanted to make this video too is because fearful avoidance, and I'll tell you what to work on here in a moment. Um, they tend to be very, like, empathetic and sympathetic, so then they tend to express something and then feel really guilty about it later or really, like, shame themselves or then give themselves a hard time about it later. And so I wanted to highlight, like, hey, here's some things that we can do. So, the first thing is to understand what's going on here, right? To understand that there's a whole bunch of unmet needs first that then lead to this activation of an old story that we're projecting onto a current experience. And then when our nervous system is already dysregulated and more in fight or flight, then we're likely to really express even more because there's a sense of urgency behind everything when we're in fight or flight mode, when we're in sympathetic nervous system mode. So these are the three things you really want to work on. I'll give you a little strategy for each one. If you want to have a really in-depth course that will help you find all of the stories, the best course for this is our emotional mastery and belief reprogramming course. And you can check it out for free for 7 days using the link below, but it will really give you access to understanding like, why do I get these really painful experiences? Where is this volatility coming from? And to actually pluck out all of those big triggers and be able to recondition them. You weren't born with them. They got conditioned into you through repetition and emotion. And you can actually use similar principles to recondition new narratives, to let those old neural pathways atrophy and die out slowly. And you can move into a new way of thinking, feeling. And if you do it on a daily basis, use some of these tools, you can actually recondition in a very short period of time. Especially compared to the fact that you're probably carrying these narratives for so long and they're painful to carry. So the first tool that you want to use is you want to be able to find what those subconscious narratives are and recondition those stories so that you're not going to that place, right? So what this would look like is that rather than feeling really triggered about the need and then feeling exponentially more triggered that then you go and they disrespect me, my roommate disrespects me. Instead, you would just have the unmet need. And if we're less emotionally triggered because we don't have that added story, we have more space to be like, okay, I really need to communicate this need. I'm frustrated, but I can go communicate the need. There's usually enough emotional control to be able to just talk about a need in a fairly constructive way. Whereas when we then have a story, and we go to express a need, we do it from a place of thinking this person totally doesn't respect you at all or totally doesn't care about you, when that may not be exactly what's taking place. There could be some alternative situations that are going on. So it helps us really like equilibrate and then go to the need as well. So the second step is to learn to express your need in a healthy way. And really the easiest couple step solution is like if you feel this impulse to kind of criticize with your words, think of like if I had to flip this into a need behind what I would be critical about, what would that be? So if it's like I need this person to do the dishes, they never do the dishes. The need might be for some help around the house. The need might be for some support. The need might be for more equality around the chores. And if you're saying to somebody, you know what, you never spend time with me. Okay, the need is probably for more quality time, maybe to feel seen or heard or like you matter. So we can usually say, okay, what am I mad about and what's the opposite? And we can usually find a need in there. And the more we can communicate our needs in that form, the better things tend to go. And number three, you really want to get working on regulating your nervous system. We have a course for free on that too that you can check out for 7 days, called Somatic Processing and Nervous System Regulation. And it will help you feel like you are back in your body, can feel your feelings in real time, have some healthy habits to like really stay connected and embodied. So like really connected to your emotions so that you catch those things earlier. Like rather than feeling like, oh my gosh, by the fifth time my roommate didn't do the dishes, let's pretend, you're so upset and so frustrated, you'll be able to feel smaller emotions earlier on instead of when it's like too late because there's so much to come up. And so by doing that, by practicing getting back into your body, being connected to your emotions in real time, it will help you able to communicate those needs earlier, and to catch those things that are frustrating you earlier, rather than when there's like such a buildup of frustration that then it sort of pops, right? Like it's like a volcano, like it erupts. And really that's a signpost of like you being disconnected from yourself all the first few times. And so by solving for that, it's a very healthy, proactive strategy to empower the next steps forward. So again, you can check both of those courses out for free for 7 days below if you want to do a much deeper dive into those things. And hopefully this gave you some insight into like where that frustration comes from and where that criticism comes from. And be gentle to yourself, right? It's a trauma response from a series of different places over the years that sort of accumulated when you become volatile. But hopefully this helps and serves. So thank you for listening and watching. And please subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying this content. And I will see you in future videos.